Today we are doing a brief introduction to digital audio, and this is of concern in digital curation in that audio files will sometimes be kinds of files that you are expected to work with. It's also an important awareness if you're curating an exhibit and the artist is doing an installation whereby audio is part of the installation, audio and video. And you're thinking about even things like storage size or sound quality. So we want to look at the difference between analog and digital signals, sort of identify the sampling standards. When we're talking about digital audio, we talk about sampling. And then we are going to describe different sampling variables involved, and then how these variables affect file size in an audio file, as well as the quality of an audio file. I got a feeling that's going to be going off. Just give me a second here. I forgot to shut off Chrome. So when we are describing analog audio signal, it's continuously recorded. It's a sine wave, and a sine wave, if you were to look at it on a VU meter, has the appearance of a wave like that, as compared to when it's laid out digitally. You can see that it looks different. So it's usually recorded on some type of magnetic medium, or as I was mentioning in the old days, because the magnetic medium for audio until the late 80s was tape. It tended to be tape, and so if you remember your cassette tape, that was one of the mediums, and those cassette tapes were dubbed of much larger reel-to-reel tapes, which were in recording studios, for example. And so it may be magnetic, as we saw with more contemporary technology, but as mentioned earlier, how celluloid was an earlier technology. It wasn't magnetic, but it was plastic or wax that a needle actually engraved the sound into. And that's when we were listening to some of the old recordings, say, for example, of Al Jolson, or anything on 78 RPMs and earlier. Digital, on the other hand, it's actually the sound is sampled. In other words, it's almost like a constant flicker, all right, where the sound is being picked up by the recording instrument and is recorded as digital information or bits of data. So where a sound wave would be like this, continuous. Actually, each of these little black dots that you see actually represents a discrete bit of sonic information. And the sampling is something that's, I have to confess, deep in a mystery to me, as far as the way that it is represented graphically. But what you're doing here is that when we're talking about computer information, computers operate on two numbers, 0 and 1, on-off in essence. And it's the combinations of 0 and 1 that give you different colors as well as record sound. So binary information is digital information. And it's different in that when you have things that are analog, as I mentioned earlier, and it's recorded on a magnetic medium, when you want to edit that, you actually have to cut the medium in order to cut a piece out, for example. As compared to digital information, you can cut that piece up and not destroy the original. So you can actually cut it out and slice it together right away and have it appear seamless, as if there was no cut at all. So that's one of the advantages of digital media right now, is that you can do non-destructive alterations in that data. And the most familiar types of digital audio that you encounter our computer sound, which includes sound that streams off the internet, for example, from YouTube, or even as you would get if you subscribe to Netflix, you're still getting digital sound. So it's what comes off the computer, off the internet, and then CDs and DVDs. These are the ones that you are most familiar with. And this is the first generation. You all have either kids or grandkids that, or right now maybe sisters, brothers, or yourself might be the first generation of people that a cell phone and digital technology has always been a part of your life or someone you know. So, whereas you have someone like me that still remembers analog and disrupted and so we have a wider range of experience in the way that we perceive sound. Now, the digital audio file types these are the most common. You have the wave, which is called a waveform audio file, and that's considered CD quality and even less. You have the MP3, which is MPEG-3, and that is a wide range of quality choices because it depends on the choice of the person who encoded the file, the quality that they wanted. So, for example, you could encode, if you're, say, you've heard that, have you all heard the expression ripping a song? That is referring to taking an audio file and then converting it to MP3, for example. And you make a decision about the quality and the file size of the file that you are ripping. And so you could do it at 64 kilobytes, you could do it at 128, you can do it at 256, you can do it at 340, and each of those choices will affect the quality of the sound as well as the size of the file. So if you've got a little, if you got one of those iPod Nanos and only had 4 gigabytes of memory, and then someone has like 800 albums on it, and you know that the sound quality of those files is going to be pretty low to be able to squeeze that much information. But they're all listening to headphones. So they're not concerned with quality, they're just concerned with ambience. But if you wanted to have that sound play in an auditorium and people actually appreciate it, they would have to encode it or rip it in a much higher format. WMA is Windows Media Audio, and it's the Microsoft competitor for MP3.
When that's not done correctly, is that when you hear funny static or like white noise?
That could be,
Okay.
but it also, or it might be when you have ripped it at such a low rate that you've lost a lot of information, and so it sounds sometimes like it's underwater, or yeah, you might hear distortion.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense now.
You'll encounter, in particular, when you're using GarageBand, you'll encounter the MP3 as well as the AIFF, Audio Interchange File Format, which tends to be cross-platform. In other words, you can either perceive or work with in both Windows and Mac OS, as well as Linux. Now, Linux is an operating system that is totally free, and it runs like Windows. And so you can get a Linux operating system, install it, and then download free programs to do word processing. You can rip MP3s. There's actually a lot of Linux software out there that is totally free. It does take learning. That, for example, the typical Linux operating systems might be Linux Mint or Ubuntu or Debian. These are all free operating systems. And AIFF will be read by all of those, as will MIDI, Musical Instrument Digital Interface, which is totally different because with MIDI, you're actually taking a musical instrument and you're plugging it into the computer, or a soundboard is plugged into the computer. And so, did any of you ever, do you remember the song Steamroller by Peter Gabriel? Has anyone ever heard that song? That was done totally electronically on the whole album. He was one of the talking heads were some of the first innovators in the these were artists in the 80s who were using musical instrument digital interface. Now, most keyboardists in most bands are using musical instrument digital interface. So they're actually, what you're hearing is electronically reproduced sound. So it might sound like a grand piano, but what it is a grand piano that has been recorded, converted into a digital format so that when the person hits a note, he's actually playing a recording, in essence, of a grand piano.
So that's like if a DJ were to get a keyboard and then make all these samples of all these different sounds, he can use those different files and then retransfer them
To another format.
interface and use them musically.
Yeah.
That's neat.
And with MIDI, it involves some level of programming or setting various computer as well as instrument settings to achieve the sound that you want. You're not going to be worrying about MIDI. Although GarageBand allows you to use MIDI, that's something you'll not have to worry about. So there are different variables that you need to be concerned with. And as a curator, this is just a real quick overview because this is just to give you an orientation. So how many samples or what's the sampling rate? How much data is being sampled? And then how many channels are being sampled? Really, the only one you have to be concerned with is going to be your channels that are being sampled, because most artists will have an idea ahead of time what they want to do. So there are different sampling rates. Right? For example, digital video is a very high sampling rate, because to capture the video and audio, a vast amount of information has to be converted into a digital format. And so digital video is going to be the largest file size in general. CD quality is going to be, you might say, moderately high sampling rate. And then we think of things in stereo as compared to mono. Now you'll note with digital video, when you're hearing it play right off the master tape, the master recording, it has that really excellent sound. Once you make copies of that, it starts to, or when you're converting it, because the master, for example, you watch a DVD, it might be a, let's see, gosh, I haven't seen it in quite a while. So, what's that? Thunderheart. All right, so you're watching Thunderheart. It's on DVD. Right, that's going to be 4.7 gigabytes of a file size on the DVD. The master from which that was converted is easily 100 times that size. And the quality in an editing room that the editors are looking at is different than the quality that you are watching and listening to. The quality of being live in the studio, mastering an album, is going to be different than the quality of the person who's playing. And when you listen to, do you have AM and FM radio in your car? When you switch over to AM or FM, which one has the better sound? FM. And now you have digital radio and satellite radio, so actually a lot of that stuff can actually be played through loudspeakers and still sound pretty darn good, like a CD. And then if you compare an AM radio to a telephone, you'll notice that if you've ever encoded an MP3 file and it sounds like a telephone call, you're really disappointed. It sounds terrible because a lot of information is dropped out in order to be able to send that signal. So these are all different sampling rates, and they all affect file size when we're looking at media that has become permanent. When we're looking at sampling rates, and some of this is explained in the readings too, is that digital video, 48,000 samples per second. other words, it's almost as if someone has a flashlight and they're turning it on 48,000 times in 1 second to record that event. And each one of those flashlights going on is a sample. With CD quality audio sound, 44,100 samples per second. And that is left and right. So each channel is doing 22,000 in essence. So you have an audio file, and you're concerned with file space, and you're not worried about whether it's in stereo or not. For example, you had a digital audio recorder, a very good one, and you're recording an elder discussing something important historic event in the town. And it's recording in stereo. And it's a really large file size, and you've got several other recordings to do. You could make a decision instead of record it mono. And it actually cuts that amount of space that will consume in half. It also cuts that space in half for storage. So each channel is going to affect file size and audio quality too. So the sampling rates is generally less than 8,000 samples per second for a telephone. So a lot of information is being left out, yet you can still tell who the person is and what they're saying. It's nothing you would want to listen to for your MP3 player. AM radio is 11,000 per second. FM 16,000, so you hear that slight difference. And then in stereo, 22,050 per channel. Because remember, when we say stereo, it means two. So this is for one channel, and then for the other channel, and that's why it comes up to 44,100. And the reason I am putting this information here is to remind you that the sound quality is going to affect the file size. And that's based on the sampling rate. Right? How much information is being actually recorded. Don't worry about bit depth. Number of channels. As I mentioned with stereo, you've got 2 channels at 22,050. Mono, 1 channel at 22,050. But if you're in a recording studio and you've got a 32-track recorder, every one of those tracks is recording at 22,050. And so the output from that session is going to be mammoth. So digital audio, there is this strong relationship then between the file size and the quality of the sound that is recorded and then reproduced. More audio samples implies larger audio files. So in any event, as a curator, or as someone who may be doing any type of oral history, you make a decision of really how is it important that I record this interview at 320 bits per second? Or can I get away with and in stereo, even though it's going to be an MP3? Because there's a recorder I have right here. I don't work for Roland, but if you ever have to invest in a field recorder, it's the Eterol R9 by Roland. It can record in MP3 or WAV format. And you can decide the sampling rate. So there's a friend of mine and I who used to play on Monday evenings. Every now and then we get together and play guitar and record our rehearsals. And all I wanted was a recording of the event. I didn't want to play this for the internet. It's not going to show up on YouTube. So I would record at a very low sampling rate, just so I would hear the songs and know the notes and the melodies being played. But when we're recording audio and it's just someone's voice, you don't even have to decide, you down a really high bit rate or sampling rate, unless this is something you plan to actually burn to a CD and mass distribute, which you can still do with this weapon. This is the Adderall R9 by Roland. They're a very good company, and they're dedicated to sound. So for field recording, you can make that decision of how many audio samples you want. Right? It's programmable right on the recorder, so you can determine the file size ahead of time. You determine yourself. For what end use am I taking this information? Or is this going to be instead transcribed? So you're actually going to take that interview and it's going to be typed out by someone. It's going to be transcribed. Actually, the interview itself isn't going to be used. It's going to be edited later. Then you don't need to record at a really high sampling or bit rate because you're not planning to do anything with it afterwards, but listen to it the same way you listen to someone on the phone. So you make those kinds of decisions. And you do the same thing with mounting hardware exhibitions. Is it a permanent installation? Is it going to be for 1 week? Is it going to be for a month? What is the flow of traffic you're expecting? You're making those kinds of decisions about mounting and installation hardware in space. That's the same way with files. So file size is a combination of the sample rate, bit depth, and number of channels. And I keep coming back to file size, because you can fill up now. It's amazing. I can remember when having 2 megabytes of storage on your hard drive was considered unbelievable. 2 megabytes. I mean, it's a flash drive. It's a crappy flash drive. Now, most people turn their nose up at it. You don't even look at 2 megabytes anymore. You look at gigabytes, and even that's too small now. That it is an important consideration, and the reason that has changed so much is the advances in audio recording technology. So now you look at terabytes. That was a dream 10 years ago. A hard drive that was 1 terabyte. Someone talked about it, and it sounded like they were talking about a dinosaur or something. Then you realize, no, that's pterodactyl. So some of the various variables to be concerned with are the different sampling rates that I talked about. 22,050 as compared to 11,000 as compared to 8,000 or less. Are you recording 8-bit or 16-bit? That is the depth. Myself, I always default, even when I'm doing a low sampling rate, I will do 16-bit as much as possible. Whether you're recording stereo or mono, and then the actual length of the recording. These all affect file size. Yes?
Size is not a matter, you can still always record at the highest quality, and that way you can make sure your work is always.
Yes, if size is not a consideration, if you have unlimited terabytes of storage, in essence, that's what you're doing as a curator.
Right.
Because you're concerned with storing information too. Yeah. So that is a decision you make ahead of time. What is the end use?
So you have to think about the size of the file and how you're going to use the file and the best way to convert and compress that file for display.
Yeah. So a little bit about understanding, a little on the hardware. All right, that for years a sound card has been the standard. And I still remember when sound on computers was brand new. And you got a little sound card, and it sounded like your cell phone sound now when you're starting out. You know, almost like Mario Brothers or some weird little little baby. All right, the sound was not that good, and it was MIDI. All right, it was programmed music. It wasn't actually music that would play. So the sound card, and they are highly variable in quality. So you could buy a Sound Blaster for $49. Or you could buy the Yamaha for $2,459. Which one do you think is going to record at higher sampling rates and produce better sound for the end user? Obviously the Yamaha. So they are highly variable not only in quality, but also in price. And once you add a microphone, they're from about $5 and up. Spend a good amount of money on a good microphone. Spend what you can afford. The same way that a lens highly affects the quality of image on a digital camera, a microphone strongly affects the quality of the sound. Be aware when you're using a microphone of the kind of microphone that you're using. Are you using, for example, an omnidirectional microphone? And you take an omnidirectional microphone to an interview, and omni means all around it, so that anything that is within, say if this is an omnidirectional microphone, in essence, it's going to be recording sound not only in front of it, but behind it. So you're pointing towards someone, but anyone who's over here, as well as back here, the sound is being picked up. Right, so omni, in essence, means all. As compared to a shotgun microphone, which picks up that, a shotgun has a very narrow spread. Right, so when you've got a shotgun on someone, anything that's happening out here there's a minimum chance of it being picked up because it's got a very small recording area. When you've got it centered right on that person, then that's all it's going to pick up. So in interviews, it might not be a bad idea to think about using a shotgun microphone that's centered only on that one person. As compared to if you're in the field and you also want to pick up the ambient sound of activity, right? Then an omnidirectional microphone is going to be important. So considering the kind of microphone and the cost, don't skimp on the cost for a good microphone. And then we start to add cables. They are at least $4. Being aware of the difference with microphones, so as there are various kinds of converters of cables. So for example, if I plug the microphone into here, and you're using what they call an XLR or a balanced microphone, with an AKG microphone, you would have to get a converter that allows you to take the balanced end and then allow you to plug it into the little headphone jack here, or the little microphone jack, in order to record sound. So being aware of the cables and the connectors, and then that awareness of, you connect out to in. All right, out is generally what they would call a male end, and then in is the female. So if you look on the back of your computers, I want you all to look. If you were to remove the cables, are those male or female? On the computer itself, the cable, not the cables, but the computers, male or female? Female. Why? Because it's, in essence, where you're connecting something into. So the male part of it is the cable itself and the various kinds of connectors, whether it be a USB from the mouse, this would be considered in, this would be considered in, and it's considered the male. So out to in. And this is going to be important because if you have to be in a situation, you might be doing a podcast or a radio program. digital radio program that you're receiving. You're going to a soundboard. You're going to be going from a microphone to a soundboard to a computer. So what is coming out of the microphone is going into the soundboard. And then what is coming out of the soundboard is going into the computer. So always be aware of out in. That's a common mistake people make, is they plug the wrong cables into the wrong connections. Typically, when you look at Windows, whoops, oh man, I forgot to take out my little, because I used to teach this online, and I had these so unloaded one at a time. So I have animation on it. Just give me a second here. So it's still there. Crap. All right, just give me a second here. On Windows, you will generally see a code where you have, if you've got a set of computer speakers, you'll note that the computer speakers almost always have a green plug. If you've got a Windows machine, all right, and that green cues you that if you want to plug your speakers, the male into the female. If you're going to be using a computer microphone, then it shows you a little microphone. And if you are recording out digitally, it gives you another cue here. So that's kind of on Windows, that's usually how the sound card will look. As compared to on a Mac, what the hell did I do with the Mac one? I deleted it. I'll be darned. Story of my life. Let me just make sure. Yeah, I did. Okay, well, let's look at the back of the Mac then. You'll note that you still have a headphones, and then you'll see another one next to the headphones, and that's where you would be plugging in an external microphone, or if you look next to it, microphones are also USB now. So in my office, when I'm recording audio for my online, if you take an online class from me and you hear me jabbering away, it's because I have an external USB microphone. I look like a DJ in my office, and it's plugged right into the computer, and it's plugged into a USB port. So there are USB microphones that are available. And mine I purchased for about $100, and I've not been disappointed with it. So when we are creating digital audio, we have to be aware of our hardware needs. And the hardware is our computer, as well as possibly any digital mixers that we may be using, a portable or stationary recorder, and a stationary recorder could be your iMac. They actually do record sound pretty well, even right off your voice. As I mentioned, the sound and camera on an iMac cost a lot more than a lot of tower PCs that are entry level. And if you have a portable, like the Adderall that I showed you, there's also a recorder called a Zoom, spelled X-O-O-M. Yamaha makes them. And then the software that you're going to record or edit. So the recording software on the iMac is GarageBand, which allows you to record MIDI, record with a microphone, or record right off the iMac itself. It also allows you to play back pre-recorded loops, as they call them. There's also, and there are some free types of software you can use, such as SoundForge or Music Match, or another one that's become very popular is called Audacity. Audacity. And then, the software, you're not going to be worried as much about the hardware to create, such as a musical instrument digital device, because unless your artist is working with installation needs at present, that's not a consideration for you, because that's in order to create your own music. So with CDs and digital audio, what do you think are the advantages of CDs? All right, you can easily skip songs without scratching them. What else?
Portable.
They're portable. You don't have to carry a band around with you. What else?
It's supposed to have better quality.
Yeah, they're better quality than cassettes, for example, the previous technology. Or 8-tracks, as we were mentioning, or 78s. Although there are some people, including myself, who still prefer phonograph, wax, over digital audio. There's more of a warmer sound, and I can tolerate the pops and the crackles for a different sound quality. Other advantages. Yes, they're highly piratable. All right, they can be copied and reproduced easily, which is what made the sound industry crack down on Napster back in the, about 15 years ago, which was one of the first user-to-user file sharing programs. So you could have sound recorded on your computer, and someone in Brazil could download that file off your computer and listen to the same music. So yeah, it's very, very reproducible. What do you think some of the disadvantages might be? They scratch easily. Still, something else over here?
Oh,
Same thing, scratch.
melt.
They can melt. So they are susceptible to damage. What do you think are some of the advantages of computer sound files and over CDs? Or any other?
It's almost like they take up zero space, like physical space.
Yeah, you can fit many more of them. If you have 800 CDs and you have them all in CD racks, that's a lot of space. That's compared to 800 on a computer, and it might be on a little drive about that big. All right, so storage space. What else? Yeah, it's more permanent, but do not think secure. But definitely permanent. Because what can happen to hard drives? They can crash, they can fail. And it only takes losing all your information once to learn that you can store stuff on an external hard drive, and here, back it up twice. Get 2 external hard drives. Don't rely on just one USB flash drive. Have everything backed up at least twice. Because the flash drives have a very high failure. And even being aware of that there's even different on, when you got a CD, all you do is you hit the eject button. Do the same thing with your flash drives on a computer. Because if you just yank them out of the machine, they can create an electrical charge that can cause information in that file, or I'm sorry, in that drive to become corrupt. So always eject manually your flash drives. Other advantages of CDs and DVDs are quality. That you can have your own master of it, such as in digital video, and if you are recording music for artists or interviews, as well as you have mastery over the quality of the dubs. You can create your own combinations of voice, video, images. music. Based on that, you can determine the playing time. You know, if you want something to be 30 minutes long, and you want it to be really high quality, then you're going to need a lot of storage space. So you can make that kind of decision. You have a lot of control over the space and the quality and the use with digital audio. There are some artists who are on the internet now who have made a career independent of your music industry globally because of access to the internet and their ability to master their own music, market their own music, without having to worry about any of the stuff involved with having promotion, packaging, because more and more people are getting all of their music now from the internet. CDs are probably going to be obsolete within 5 years. Everything will be cloud storage. And when it's cloud storage, it also means that as compared to a CD, if your CD rots, you've got to buy another one if you haven't backed it up. As compared to if you have something in cloud storage, it's stored in at least 9 different locations around the world. So that information is always there for you to access. And bandwidth, which is your ability to download something quickly now, has increased so much that storing on the cloud has become commonplace. And digital audio is very transportable, very durable. Some of the disadvantages and why the CDs are becoming obsolete is that a CD holds 720 megabytes of information. DVDs hold 4.7. I'm sorry, CDs are 640. We didn't raise much today. But there's no, with a CD or DVD, it's a finite, even with dual layer, a finite amount of playing time, based on the fixed size of that medium. And for that matter, when you're buying CDs, you're paying for the packaging. Are you being ripped off for the cover? Where when you can download it now, not too many people read liner notes anymore. You know, when I used to collect albums, you know, I'd buy the album and I'd read the whole album, all of the text on the album, read all the lyrics and everything. You know, and people don't do that anymore. So at most now, you're downloading the music and you get a little icon, a little avatar of that album, you know, who the artist is. And you can go to the artist's website and read about it. So there are any of the commercialization costs involved. That's why, and there is a connection here to why we're using InDesign and we're thinking about digital audio, video, and stills. Because part of the cost in producing an exhibition is the catalog. You can minimize that by having it done digitally. And then the people decide whether they want an electronic format or whether they want to go ahead and have it printed out. More and more, and by the time your kids grow up, or your grandkids, or your nieces or nephews, by the time they grow up, that is going to be the accepted way. Paper's going. It will still be there, but it'll be pricey. So on some of the technology that we use to read digital technology, whether it be the iPhone or iPods, or the iPads or various other tablets now. You know, this actually blows my mind when I think about it, that I can now talk to my iPad. And my iPad will record my voice at 99.9% accuracy and put it in text. I can write a book by talking to my iPad and taking out all the cuss words. It's astounding. The voice recognition on an iPad now is astounding for what Connie is using her iPad for. Everything. It's astounding. You can do Skype on iPad. You know, that it's really amazing, the technology that's available now. So that's definitely an advantage, the number of apps that are available. What are some of the disadvantages of an iPad? Expense, for one.
Can't be out of touch.
Can't be out of touch. Yeah. What's that? Constantly upgrading. Did you say something, Robert? Battery life. Anything else?
You don't want to drop it. Yeah.
Yeah, they're fragile. Don't want to drop it.
Advantageous too. Chicago would just steal it right out of your hand.
Yeah, invite stuff. What else? Biocompatibility, and for that matter, proprietary. In other words, there has been this long-standing battle between Adobe and Apple over the interface between the two, particularly with PDF files, Adobe Acrobat files, but other kinds of technology too, like Flash, and that there is, they don't play well together. So not only is it proprietary, in other words, once you have saddled this or linked this to a computer, it's linked to that computer. So if you take this iPad and you've got an iPad, you plug it into here, it's going to ask you if you want to remove the ownership of your other computer that you're using and have it now on this machine. And if you don't, it erases everything on your iPad. It's proprietary, not only to being Apple, but proprietary to being on a single machine. And another consideration that people don't think about and don't necessarily want to know about, because they don't have the policing on it or the control on it yet that may be necessary, is electromagnetic field, radiation. And they are showing a high correlation of people who are getting various types of tumors and high cell phone usage. Because every time you turn on that cell phone, every time you turn in that iPad, it's giving off. Anything that's going wireless is giving off electromagnetic radiation. And so if you've got a cell phone on all the time, you are constantly exposing yourself to microwaves. Has anyone ever read the microwave instruction that says, keep at least 3 feet away from this while it's running? So radiation is a strong concern, still with wireless digital technology. So what I do with my cell phone on, I turn it on once an hour. Check if there's messages. When I'm done, I turn it off. You can buy various screens and various holsters that will minimize the radiation, but those are concerns now in digital technology, including the iPods, the iPads, and cell phones.
And there seems to be no sign of a telescope light anywhere.
Would you say that had a high or low sampling rate? Would you say it had a high or low bit rate? And would you say it was a large or small file? Small. And it's embedded in a presentation. And you could barely make out the words. These are all things
I welcome this kind of examination because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
You recognize the voice? Who was it? It sounds like Edward G. Robinson, but it was Richard Nixon. But because it was at such a low sound quality and a small file size, a lot of information, the ambiance of the voice was left out. Now, some of the disadvantages then may be the lack of familiarity on the part of the end user or the creator. That's why in a digital curation class, I do bring these concepts up. That in order to play them, it may require a computer or a conversion in order to put it on an MP3 player. Or for a while, they have wave players too. And then we also talked about file size for CD quality, and then even the need to compress in order to reduce file size. So factors that you control when you're recording digital audio is you can control the volume, and in digital audio as well as in analog, if you don't have enough volume, you have a sound that's indistinguishable and can be very frustrating for the end listener. They're straining to hear the sound, and if it's too much volume, you get a lot of distortion. You have control over the quality of your recording as a microphone as compared to a patch cord. Patch cord being something that allows you to make an interface between the recorder and the computer. And then the file type. The choices that are going to vary by computer. And if you're thinking about buying a handheld, that's one of the things that you ask yourself. And when you are doing any type of audio recording for archival quality, you want to make sure that you have gone into the situation or that environment, if you can, ahead of time. And do a test recording. Because you'll know when you listen to this playback from YouTube, you're going to hear something that is a quality in this room. Echo. You're going to hear my voice echo on the recording. Which, if I was playing a Native American recording flute, would be really wonderful. Make it sound like I'm in a canyon. But you don't want me sounding like I'm in a canyon when I'm in a classroom. Well, I cannot minimize the echo in this room. So you're getting it as it is. But in various situations, ideally, you try to do sample recordings ahead of time. So that you can control the environment ahead of time, and any of those so-called uncontrollable factors, you do your best to minimize the chance for distortion, too much volume, or too much interruption, for example, from noise in the hallway. You also control the quality with the bit rate and the sampling rate. So if you want your recording to be CD quality, you'll use 16-bit and 44.1 kilohertz. As compared to radio, FM quality, which may not necessarily be for archival. You may be planning to rebroadcast it, or you may be just doing a transcription, 8-bit and 22 kilohertz. And any of your recorders will actually show you that information. Rarely will you use telephone, But there are times, and I used to, when I was a journalist, and I wanted to do an interview with someone, I had a little plug-in that I could use on my telephone, so it would actually record their voice. All right, but it still sounded, when I played it back, it still sounded like they were on the telephone because they were. All right, and so it didn't matter. I spent $1,000 on this machine, and it would still sound like they were on the telephone because they were on the telephone. So you match your needs with the use. And then the type of format that you want. We talked about codecs as compared to the various, man, my brain is dead today. Codecs such as AVI, or MPEG, or MPEG-4, or MP3. Right? But there are many possibilities within any codec to determine the quality. Each codec has that ability that you can alter the sound quality at the best or something in a lower sound quality. The compression and decompression method you're going to use. So you want to experiment. If you get a digital audio recorder, experiment by recording your own voice or an instrument at the various sampling and bit rates, mono versus stereo. And then when you take the card out and it's being read by the computer, compare file size, but also listen to sound quality. So as part of digital curation, it is being aware of the tools that you're using. And you know how to use a computer, and if you are doing sound or video archiving, knowing how to use a digital audio and a digital video recorder.